Sports fans, join the Rod Squad newsletter today. Stay ahead of the game with exclusive insights, updates, contests, and exclusive content delivered straight to your inbox, including my 10 Weekend Things column. Sign up for free today at rodpeterson.com. 10 games in the NHL tonight, including the Flames at Anaheim, as mentioned earlier. Jock Wilson joins us from QR Calgary, host of Flames broadcast, Stamps broadcast, every broadcast. Jocko, Happy New Year, my dude.
Happy New Year, Mr. Pedersen. Hopefully things are going well in your world.
They're going fantastically. How about, well, and for you, covering these teams, particularly the Flames, this has been a nice little surprise this year.
Yeah, yes and no. I would say the Flames are who we thought they were. Coming into the season, they didn't go scorched earth. They didn't go like Chicago Blackhawks. They didn't go totally young. They have some veteran presence. They have, a solid defense. The goaltending, heading into the season, you were a little bit skeptical on. However, they have gotten very good, capable goaltending from Dan Vladar and Dustin Wolf. So, are the Flames a playoff team? As of today, they're not. But, their first 20-game segment, they picked up 25 points, and 25 points in 20 games, you amortize that out over a full season. 100 points will get you into the playoffs. They haven't been quite as good in the second half of the season. They've lost their last couple. We'll see what happens. But, I don't think anybody thought the Flames would be the worst team in the National Hockey League. But were they going to be a playoff team? Still a lot of hockey to determine that.
That's why I'm glad to chat with you, because I had them picked last in the Pacific, and I'm a huge Ryan Huska fan, but it's year one of a rebuild. Let's say what it is. Would you not agree? You should not be challenging for a playoff spot in year one of a rebuild, and that's why I think they are pleasantly ahead of schedule.
They're skeptical to use the word rebuild, but I think fans know exactly where they are. And, ultimately, is it a full rebuild? When you have veteran presence, like a Blake Coleman, like a Michael Backlund, like a Jonathan Huberdeau, like a Nazem Kadri, that's not full rebuild mode. So you are still going with some veteran players who are, the lifeblood of the offense. You're infusing a little bit of youth, Rod, and that's important because you're getting good play from Martin Prospicil, you're getting good play from Connor Zary, you're getting great play, from Matty Coronado. Obviously, I talked about the goaltender Dustin Wolf. Those are the young pieces, but there are different ways to do rebuilds. And again, if you want to go with all young players, where that's going to get you in the National Hockey League. It's going to get you nowhere. It takes time. Look at the Buffalo Sabres. How many times have they hit the reset button or the rebuild button? It's a freaking disaster. So ultimately, what the Flames are trying to do, as they're moving into this new building in 2.5 years, and they hope, they can remain a competitive team and build on some of the young players. They've got the top team in the American Hockey League right now. The Calgary Wranglers are playing some excellent hockey, so they've got some pieces, in the cupboards. But I don't think it's fair to the fans to just say, hey, we're going to poop the bed and be awful, because who wants to watch that hockey? Nobody wants to watch that hockey. At least this team is entertaining to watch. Again, are they a playoff team? We can debate that, because I really don't think they will be a playoff team, but at least they're a fun team to watch.
They love hearing that they're not a playoff team. They've been trying to jam it down people's throats all year. You're right about Buffalo. They went, I think, too young. But when you talk about Chicago, you watch the game. They got Taylor Hall. They got Pat Maroon. They got old farts too. So that's yeah. I'm not sold on what they're doing either. But Jock, I want to ask one more Calgary sports question, and then talk about some other things, because you told me one time at Century Downs it's fun to come on and talk about other things on our show, right? Than what you normally do.
You bet.
You said the Stampeders were in for some tough times before anybody else, and you were like a lone voice in that town. What did you know, Jock?
Well, I don't think it was, a bold prediction by any means. All you had to do is you had to look at the history of the organization. Give the Stampeder organization all the credit in the world, because when you make the playoffs 20 years in a row, that's a major accomplishment. But I think we could all see the downward trend, and the downward trend was they won the championship in 2018, and then unfortunately, a lot of your core players, a lot of your key players, they want to get paid, and you could see a small decline happening. And, the last couple of years really have been a disaster, Roddy, as you know, because, you win 6 games last season, or at least 2 seasons ago, and then you only win 5 games last season. It's not good enough. So, boy, there were a lot of things happening here in the city. And I think, obviously the report cards coming out from the CFLPA, they sort of tell a little bit of a story. The players weren't happy with the turf at McMahon Stadium. It was awful. The injuries were happening. So thank goodness that is being corrected in the off season. And it's funny because I do host the post-game show for the Calgary Stampeder football broadcast. And it was funny. At the end of the season, after a 5-win season, fans were fed up. Fans were done. They wanted Dave Dickinson fired. They wanted Jake Mayer run out of town. They didn't get Dave Dickinson firing, but I think that the Vernon Adams trade has really put some life into this organization. Now, again, one player doesn't make your team by any means. We're going to see what happens in free agency. But all of those fans that were calling my show and saying, I'm done, I'm out, I'm not renewing my season tickets, they seem to be back on board a little bit. The Stampeders winning the Grey Cup announcement for 2026. That's also going to help their season ticket base a little bit. You're not going to do anything with the stadium. The stadium sucks. And, at least the turf is going to be a little bit better. We'll see if any extra money goes into the stadium for 2026. But bottom line is we're going to probably have to live with this building for 10 more years and maybe even longer. So bottom line is it is what it is for the Calgary Stampeders from a facility perspective. But I do think, the addition of Vernon Adams has given this team and the fan base a little to be excited about. So that's a good thing.
The pride of Pouce Coupe, BC. Jock Wilson with us from QR Calgary. Did I say that right, Jocko? Did I say that right? Pouce Coupe?
Pouce Coupe, baby. You betcha. That's for anybody that doesn't know where Pouce Coupe is. Yeah, Pouce Coupe is it's very close to Dawson Creek. It's about 11 kilometers away from Dawson Creek. And my father had a vision that Dawson Creek was going to be the hub of the peace because it's the start of the Alaska Highway. He started his accountant business in BC and in Dawson Creek. He missed it by about 70 kilometers because Grand Prairie really became the hub of the North because it was in Alberta. Prince George, I think, is now the hub of the North from that perspective. So as I told my late father, I said, you were close, but not quite there with Dawson being the hub of the North.
Aren't we all? Well, okay, so some fun stuff. When we told our viewers you were coming on, some kid wrote in, and I could get his name for you, but he said, Jock came and spoke to our school in 1992. He has an AIDS. And I'm like, no, he hasn't, actually, which I need to know your secret. But also, I've done everything in this business. And a talk show host on a post-game show is the hardest of all. And you've done it through some tough times with the Flames and the Stamps, bro. How do you handle that? I feel it's the hardest thing to do. Agree or disagree?
Well, Rod, it's funny. And of course, you've been the voice of the Riders and you sort of ride the highs and the lows of being affiliated with the team. And the toughest thing about being affiliated with the team is you don't want to lose your credibility. And so to lose your credibility, you can just pump sunshine up the butts all season long. And I just could never do that. I didn't do it when I was the Flames host. I wasn't allowed to have an opinion. I had my analysts like the Ed Chanels of the world and the Mike Rogers of the world, and so I was the traffic cop, as I called it. So I didn't have an opinion. I let the guys have the opinion. And then of course I started Sports Talk with Jock on the home of the Flames, and it was funny because I called for the head of Al Coates. I called for the head of Brian Sutter, and of course they both got fired, but I was fired 2 weeks later. So the moral of the story is when you're affiliated with an organization, you do have to be sensitive, I guess, is for lack of a better word, and you can't be too critical. But again, if you're not critical when you need to be critical, then you can lose all credibility. So it is a fine line. But hey, the bottom line is, if you don't enjoy what you're doing and you can't have a little bit of credibility by calling a spade, it's don't do it. Don't do it. So it's different when
Yeah.
you're the play-by-play voice, like Mark Steven. You've had Mark on the show, and you've been the play-by-play voice. You have a different relationship. But when you're hosting a show or hosting a call-in show, you can take a little bit of a different role. We have Greg Pedersen as our color guy. And Greg Pedersen, nicest guy in the world, but he will never say a negative thing about the Calgary Stampeders, and I think the listeners respect that. So I don't make him say anything negative. And that's my dog in the background, just so you know.
What's your dog
So the other thing I was going to say, Oliver just looking out the window. What I was going to say though, it's funny because one of my highlights from 2024 is we had a caller on our post-game show, and his name was Ed. And Ed said, Jock, you may as well call your show the Frosted Flakes Show because you sugarcoat everything. And you know what I say, Ed, if that's how you feel, that's fine. But do we sometimes sugarcoat it a little bit? Hey, of course we do.
That's fantastic. I love it. What's up with? Are you a big Shillington fan? What's the genesis of the name Oliver?
Oliver Shillington, it's that's an interesting one, eh? He should be a Calgary Flame. Stuck to his guns, decided not to re-sign with the Calgary Flames after the Flames really did work hard with him, through his personal issues, being away from the game. He was respected in the dressing room. I don't have the inside story there, Rod. So I don't want to speculate too much what went wrong. And did he get bad advice from the agent? On the surface, I would say yes. But hey, he made his bed. He has to lie in it, and he's certainly not the same player that he was. I apologize for my dog. He's not the same player that he was in Calgary.
I just meant, did you name your dog after him? That's all.
Oh, I'm sorry. No. It's funny. This is my wife's dog, and we've had two dogs in our life. My dog was a long time ago. His name was Zinger. He was a Jack Russell Terrier. I named him after the golfer Paul Azinger. So there you go. But Oliver, my wife named him. So there's no good history there.
Okay, good. Jeff, the Stamps fan, writes in. He says, Greg Pedersen and I have that in common, Jeff said, who's regarding not saying anything negative about the Stampeders. So that's a good thing. Greg's paid for that, but I also don't think Greg thinks anything negative about the Stampeders. At least I've never seen him say anything negative on the air or off. Wayne in Victoria, BC writes in. He says, I like Jock's take on being in sports talk and team coverage. He tells it like it is. As John Friend
Thank you.
Say, yeah, but that comes with some arrows, just so you know. Yeah. Well, I meant to get to a few other things, but we went off track here. What you following this NFL stuff? The coaching firings and hirings?
Oh, of course.
Playoffs? Are you in on that?
Of course. How can you not? I love the NFL playoffs. I love the wild card playoffs. To be honest, I'm probably more of a fan, and I did jump on the Joe Burrow Cincinnati Bengals bandwagon because my daughter went to LSU for a couple of years, and she was in LSU when Burrow won the national championship, and that may have been the best college football team in the history of the NCAA. I can't remember how many first round draft picks they had in that from that team, but it was a great team. And so my daughter got to know Joe Burrow a little bit, had pictures with the Heisman Trophy and everything else. So I thought, I'm going to follow Joe Burrow. And I do feel bad for him because this was a wasted season. They win their last 5 games of the season, and Joe Burrow could be in the running for the MVP award. So I feel bad for him. Jamar Chase is just a stud. The guy is unbelievable, but defensively they weren't good enough. So, I tell you what, Tommy Stevens. I love Tommy Stevens of the Calgary Stampeders. I don't know if he's going to be re-signed by the team, but he played for Dan Campbell when he was when he was in New Orleans, when he was basically being converted to a tight end. And he had so many good things to say about Dan Campbell. Who doesn't love Dan Campbell, Rod? I tell you what. So
exactly.
If you're asking me for my thoughts, I don't want to see the Chiefs win again. I would love to see the Lions take it.
Well, it's interesting. He was an assistant coach with the Dolphins for a while and interim coach for part of a season here in Miami. And what they're saying now is we shouldn't have let him go. They loved being around him.
Yeah.
Obviously, a tremendous coach, and they just think the world of him. So, yeah, there's some wonderful stories in the NFL. Well, Jock, all the best in 2025. I hope we can do it again. It's always nice chatting with you, my friend.
You've got my number. You can call anytime, Roddy, and always enjoy the show.
Same here. Jock Wilson joining us from QR Calgary. It's a fun time going on his show as well. They always want a Matthew Tkachuk update on the great things he's doing with the Panthers. We'll be back with a sports update after this. Viewer takeover. We're live on the Game Plus television network that airs all across Alberta and BC. TELUS Optic Channel 924, Rogers Shaw Cable Channel 230, and of course all across the rest of Canada and 32 U.S. states. We're also streaming live and podcasts wherever the best podcasts are found.